right, so this is a syllabus basically. It's POM 3001, Introduction to Production and Operations Management. And it's a 3-credit course. Your prerequisites is that you should have done Introduction to Management and College Mathematics. The course does have a strong component of mathematics involved, as you will see as we go through the syllabus. A lot of calculations. So we're saying that next class, make sure you have your calculators with you so we can go through some of the calculations, especially since we're going to be looking at production, productivity, and further down, we're going to be looking at learning curves, that kind of stuff. But anyhow, in terms of the module description, production operations management deals with managing resources or systems to create products and services. So we're creating products because that's what businesses do. They either create products and sell those products, or they provide a service and charge for those services, right? So the focus of this module is designing production systems to facilitate world-class performance that is essential for competitive success and long-term survival. As you well know, any company in business, large or small, sustainability is important, which is their survival basically, but they want to always have a competitive advantage, because that's what determines their success or failure, right? Unless they're in a market by themselves, or if they're in a niche market. I'm going to talk about niche markets, so not to worry if you've never heard the word niche before. We're going to get to it as we get into the course. So analytical techniques, tools, and concepts for improving the performance of operations along these dimensions are included in this module. Right? General objectives. So when you complete this course, you should be able to understand, you should understand the nature and role of production and operations management, right? Establish the relationship between operations and productivity. You know, obviously there's a relationship there, right? And to identify the different types of facilities, layout that can be used in manufacturing and service operations. So look at the layout. Apply various tools that can be used to access and improve the quality of a process. We're going to assess, you should be able to assess the capacity needs for operations above a break-even point. Anybody just seen something called break-even point for the first time? Let me know. Or you've done some break-even calculations in the past. Anybody wants to comment on break-even quickly? You've seen it before, you know what it is. Quick comment, yes or no. Let's just move on.
So,
just to say if you've come across it before, and not to tell me what it is or anything like that. We're going to get into it. So not to worry. I just want to know, get a feel for if you've done it before.
Yes, sir, I've heard it.
yes,
Okay.
sir, I've done break-even
Analysis. Okay, good. Okay, so you should be able to apply the concept of acceptance sampling and statistical process control in industry. At Cadbury's, we used to do a lot of that because we used to actually make chocolate from cocoa beans and sugar, right? But we had to keep them in the liquefied form. So we kept them in huge tanks. And in the tank jacket, what's called a jacket of the tank, we used to run steam. So steam is what we used to use to heat those tanks. And so we did a lot of statistical process control to make sure the steam was at a certain temperature. And if the temperature fell, then the process would adjust itself to bring the temperature back up to that normal temperature that we're looking at. But we'll get into some of that as we move on through the course. Understand the key components of good service and goods design, right? And ways to improve reliability in the design decision. We're going to analyze different location possibilities for an organization. So basically you want to know where you should put a facility, whether you're a manufacturer or you're a retailer. There's some special places that or special features as to how you decide where you put your facility. Analyze different, okay, we've done that. So understand the strategic requirement of operations in the global environment. As you well know, It's not just about Kingston or St. Mary anymore, or Jamaica for that matter. We're talking about the global environment. The world has become a much smaller place thanks to technology, right? So in terms of the module content in detail, a little bit more detail. Unit 1, we're going to be looking at operations and productivity, right? At the end of this unit, you should be able to, as I said, define operations management. You should be able to explain the difference between production and productivity. Now, there are differences between that, so you should be able to find that out. You should be able to calculate what's called a single factor productivity and multi-factor productivity, right? Hence, you need your calculators, as I mentioned earlier, to be able to evaluate the critical variables in enhancing productivity. So in terms of the content, we're going to be, and without repeating myself, defining operations management, the strategic role of operations, what operations managers do, because some of you are minoring in operations, and even if you're measuring in operations, you still need to know where you can find jobs and what it is that operations managers do. And we're going to look at some heritage. And by heritage, we're talking about the history, because that's important to know some of the key persons who developed operations management. So we're going to look at the historical development of operations management. We're going to look at operations in the service sector, new trends in operations management, the concept of production, the productivity challenges. So these are productivity measurements, factor productivity and total productivity, factors affecting productivity, improving productivity in the Jamaican context, productivity and the service sector, ethics, will become a big thing now, ethics and social responsibility. Unit 2, we're going to be looking at learning curves. Anybody ever heard the term learning curve? Anybody?
No, sir.
Never heard the term learning curve?
No, sir.
Good. Well, the learning curve basically, you've heard a person say, boy, you're going up the learning curve real fast. And by learning curve, we're saying that, let's say a dressmaker has to make 100 dresses. She takes 1 hour to make the first dress. You think she's going to take the same 1 hour to make the second dress?
No.
She's going to take a shorter time, right? Because now she knows which, now she has learned some of the little ins and outs and stuff from making the first dress. So that's what the learning curve is all about. That you're gonna produce subsequent units at a much faster rate, or it takes you a shorter time to produce other units after you've done the first unit. So that's what the learning curve is all about, right? So so we're going to be looking at defining learning curves, evaluate the learning curves effect on, and we're going to be using some different methods. So we're going to talk about talk about the arithmetic method, the coefficient method, and the logarithmic method, right? And we're going to appraise the strategic implications of learning curves, right? I'm going to look at learning curves in manufacturing as well as in the service industry, okay? And for unit 3, sorry. Oh boy. All right, let me use this instead. It keeps jumping. Okay, so for unit 3, we're going to be looking at process strategies and sustainability. And once you finish this, you should be able to compare 4 4 production processes, and those 4 processes we're talking about are process focus, repetitive focus, product focus, and mass customization, right? You should be able to compute the crossover points for different processes, apply the tools of process analysis. You should be able to critique customer interaction in process design, evaluate recent advances in production technology. And as we said, we're going to examine the 4 R's of sustainability, right? Those 4 R's are resources, recycle, regulations, and your reputation, right? How does reputation affect your sustainability, right? How does recycling affect your sustainability? How do regulations, government regulations, affect the sustainability of your company? And how do the resources affect the sustainability of your company? Yeah. But then we're going to move to Unit 4. And for Unit 4, we're now going to be talking about capacity planning. Very important, as are all the units. But here we're going to be looking at differentiating among the design capacity, effective capacity, and utilization. Again, here are some calculations. Jordan, are you in?
Yes, sir, I'm in.
Okay, so yourself and Yvonne, you're gonna have to introduce yourselves to us. Let me see if Yvonne is in. She's probably not in yet. Yvonne, you're in? Probably not yet. And you're late. Class starts at 11. And you should be here at 11 when the class starts. Yvonne, can you hear us? She probably can't hear us. Let's continue. All right, so yeah, we're gonna be looking at recommendations in terms of the solution for bottlenecks, the impact on bottleneck on capacity. By the way, you guys know what a bottleneck is in a process? Anybody?
No, sir.
Well, we're gonna get into it. A bottleneck basically is just the slowest stage in a process. Whatever slows down your production process, right? That's your bottleneck. So you want to try and see, because we always want to increase productivity, right? So if you have a bottleneck, you need to know how to deal with your bottleneck if you're trying to increase your productivity. You need to determine your expected monetary value of a capacity investment. And you need to be able to compute net present value. Some of you have done this before, calculated net present value. Yes, no? Anybody has ever calculated net present value or come across it?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. So we're going to be doing some more of that, net present value, as it relates to operations management. All right. So when we talked about break-even analysis, we're going to be looking at single product case as well as a multi-product case for your break-even, right? Reducing risk with incremental changes. We're going to look at applying investment analysis to strategy-driven investment. And as we said, some of you would have looked at net present value in another course before, right? But we're going to be looking at variable costs, fixed costs, cash flow, that kind of stuff, right? Unit 5, we're going to be looking at location strategy, as I mentioned earlier. Location is very important if you're putting up a brick and mortar facility. By the way, you guys ever heard the term brick and mortar? Yes, no?
No, sir.
Sometimes when you don't understand something, okay, so brick and mortar basically is a building, basically, but it's just called for short brick and mortar, because some of you can do your business online, whereas some of you will have to set up a brick and mortar, you know, where people would come in to your facility, whether factory or your retail location. So that's called a brick and mortar facility. But anyway, in terms of location strategy, we always hear about location, 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 right? Location is very important for setting up your business, and we want to be able to recommend locations based on what's called a factor rating method, as well as a locational break-even analysis. We want to evaluate a location based on any of those two factors. We want to examine the difference between service and manufacturing location decision. Because if you're manufacturing, you want to locate at a certain area, versus if you're doing retail or selling or want people to come into your store, then you need to locate at another particular area. And we have some things that determine where you locate your facility, if it's manufacturing or retail. And then item number 6 or unit number 6, we look at layout strategy, right? Where we're going to be discussing the strategic importance of layout decisions, identifying important issues in office layout, because as you may or may not know, office layout is important also. There's different reasons why the layout is as such. So you put all the persons who are going to be dealing with accounts receivable, you put them in one area because they can talk the same language and they can feed off each other, right? Whereas the persons dealing with payables who are going to be paying your bills, you put them in one area. Again, because there's some synergies that can be gained if they're in close proximity to each other. We're going to want to look at and diagnose the appropriate use of fixed position layout. So fixed position layout, say if you're building a bridge or something like that, you want to bring all your materials to a certain point. So you don't have to, because that's a large project. So you don't have to be moving materials, large material over a large distance. Everything is close by. And the example in the text is going to talk about a ship making company, right? We want to be able to recommend how to achieve a good process-oriented facility layout. Recommend how to balance production flow in a repetitive or production-oriented facility. Right, so our syllabus is quite involved, and I'm sure you guys are going to love it actually, especially if we become interactive, especially if you guys ask questions, especially if you guys give me some examples. That kind of stuff, of course, can be a lot of fun, basically, right? And then look at computerized layout techniques, that kind of stuff. Last but not least, we're going to be looking at work measurement, right? So we'll be able to discuss labor planning policies, apply the most appropriate methods, analysis tools, determine the most appropriate normal time and standard time for a job. Again, this is calculations we're talking about. Determine the proper sample size for a time study. So you're looking at Z value. You guys have seen normal distribution table, right? In another course. A normal distribution table where you find a Z value. Yes, right. All right, great. So here, right, and again, we want to be looking at some ethics in the workplace. Ethics have become a very important part of the operations manager's repertoire that he has to be able to work around and handle, right? Work ethics or ethics in the workplace, honesty, that kind of thing, right? So we're going to be having lectures as well as tutorials. I don't think you have lecture on your timetable. So I'm going to have to pre-record some of the lectures, as well as sometimes I might just do the lecture in the tutorial session. I think we usually have time enough to be able to do that. Lectures in the tutorial. So some of them I will record because I have 2 classes. So I'll record some, and whatever is recorded, I'll through WhatsApp or through an email, just tell you to refer to the recording before you come to class so that we can work out problems in the tutorial if there are problems to be worked out. All right.
Okay, sir.
Let me continue to the part that you guys really want to hear about, the assessment procedure. So you're going to have 2 tests, right? 2 tests, each is 25%. So test 1 is 25%, test 2 is 25%, right? And your final exam is worth 50%. So that's about 100% of all your marks are accounted for. All right. So everybody knows that that's how it is. So, oops, let me get out of this. So the text, guys, the text is on Moodle. Everybody have seen the text? Text is on Moodle, so you basically just,
Okay.
Yes,
Huh?
sir, I have. It's in
Right.
case materials.
Right, on the right course material. You just need to download it. So here we go. Week 1, which is today, would be your intro on operations and productivity. We're not going to touch that though. We'll just do the introductions and leave it there. So week 2, we're looking at operations and productivity. Week 3, we're probably still going to be into operations and productivity, but we have some slack left in there because for unit 2, which is learning curve, we can actually do that in 1.5 classes. So that'll be okay because there's a lecture on learning curve. So you might want to, once we finish with operations and productivity, you can just go to the lecture, and then in that class we will just work problems out. Okay, I will still touch on some of the theories behind the learning curve though. And then we're going to unit 3, which is the process strategies and sustainability. We continue that. And we also move to capacity planning. And then week 7, guys, week 7, which is a long time, so we will definitely cover the topics. And here are the topics for the first test: operations and productivity and learning curve. Oh, there's one other topic, globalization. Well, it's all right. It's in the text, operations and productivity. But basically, those are the topics. If anything changes, I will let you know. But those are the topics: operations, productivity, and learning curves. All right. Any changes, I'll tell you way ahead of time. And then week 9 is going to be your test 2, where we're going to be looking at 2 topics: process strategies and capacity planning. Okay. And then we continue with unit 5, 6, 7, location strategy, layout strategy, work measurement, and that will be it. And then it's on to your final exam, where these are the topics for your final exam: location strategy, layout strategy, and work measurement. All right, so that takes us to the 1 hour that we had planned to go through your introduction and through the syllabus. All right, let me see about something in the chat. Okay, good. So all persons, please check the chat now because I'm closing it off so you can get into the chat, into the WhatsApp group. The link to the WhatsApp group is in the chat, guys. So those who came in late, go to the chat. The link is there for you to get onto the WhatsApp group. Okay. All right. So that is it. Until next week, then, guys. Which there are going to be a lot more people joining us next week, but I will basically refer them to the this recording. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All right, great.
Okay, sir, next week.
Sir,
Okay, go ahead.
Where's the link? I'm not seeing the link.
Yeah, man, everybody. Oh, it's on the chat. Go ahead, look in the chat, scroll up and down the chat so you can get on quickly.